Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today for my first drive in the new Ferrari Portofino M. The M stands for Modificata, the update to the Portofino that I drove when it launched a few years ago and realised that this, despite being the entry-level Ferrari, is very much a serious machine. Well, now it offers more power, it has a new gearbox, new looks as well, and some refined technology and new introductions, and today we're going to fully explore it, take it out for a first drive to get an experience with the new Ferrari Portofino M. This is the car for today then, the new Ferrari Portofino M. We're going to be taking it out for a drive, kicking off from here at Dick Lovett Ferrari in Swindon, where the showroom is filled with some lovely cars. We've got the Ferrari Enzo, 488 Pista, an F50, and a number of the other cars from the lineup, plus an F12 TDF over there. We also have an SF90 Stradale tucked just behind. But this particular example of the Portofino M that we're going to be taking via some fantastic roads to the Cotswolds is a stunning looking thing. It's presented in Celeste Metallic, the paint, and combined on the interior with Cuoio Toscana, the semi-aniline historic leather. We've got the carbon fibre LED driver zone, we've got the full visual carbon fibre on the exterior, but really and truly, the Portofino M changes things quite a lot. M stands for Modificata. You can look at it as the mid-life cycle refresh, bringing some new technology, new features, more power, and some more additional things beyond that to the Portofino line, a car that I drove when it launched out in Italy a couple of years ago, and despite, as I said, being the entry-level Ferrari in some ways, and this car sitting alongside the Roma, it is very much an impressive machine to enjoy driving. Now, to walk around and go through some of these details, visually, it wears new bumpers, front and rear. There's been a change to the design and the intakes for the cooling towards the V8. We've got the ADAS, the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, the sensors and things that you have installed. Coming around towards the rear, similar changes back here with a slightly new design to the flanks, the sides of the bumper, and also to the diffuser itself, again presented in the full exposed carbon fibre. But really, this is about what's happened underneath the skin. Now, it still has the 3.9 litre twin turbocharged V8 up front, but power has gone up from 600 horsepower to 620, that's 612 brake horsepower, still maintaining the same 760 newton meters, but a fundamental change is the gearbox, doing away with the 7-speed dual clutch transmission from before and incorporating the new 8-speed gearbox inherited from the SF90 Stradale. That means your first to 7th gears are slightly shorter ratios, more sprightly driving experience, and the 8th gear is more of an overdrive, which gives you in this a top speed of 199 miles an hour or faster, 320 kilometers an hour or more. Now, the acceleration speed, remember, it's all rear-wheel drive, 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour in 3.45 seconds, 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, 124 miles an hour is dispatched in just 9.8. Now, one big thing that's changed, along with a lot of the technology under the skin in terms of the driving dynamics, is the introduction on the Manettino of race. Typically, race has been reserved for the super GTs like the 812, for example, or the mid-engine supercars, but now finding its way into the Portofino, which I think tells you a little bit of the intent of this and what Ferrari are going for, making the Portofino M more of a driver-focused machine, giving it more performance and more driving involvement, which is exactly what I'm looking forward to experiencing today. Now, of course, it's parked here at the moment with the roof folded away. We've got the retractable hardtop, which would open out or fold away underneath the rear boot lid. We'll have a very quick look at what we've got here. Just hit the button, open that up, and you can see we've got this tucked back, which does take up some of the luggage space that you'd have in the rear, but we'll see more of that mechanism a little bit later on. For the moment, let's come round, because one of the very interesting things about this to me is the sound you get from the exhaust on this, because of course now OPF generation, you might think that would do significant damping to the amount of sound, but Ferrari have worked very hard on the acoustics and the way they use the silencers, as you'll hear when I hit the button. Not bad, hey? So, I think it is time to take this for a drive to go and experience the Ferrari Portofino M. The first part of our adventure is going to take us on the motorway, so I'm actually going to pop the roof up into place to begin with. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but the beautiful thing about this roof is that when it is up, you are very much in a coupe, in a car that looks like a nice, sporty GT coupe shape, as opposed to having awkward lines that you often have introduced when you have a convertible, and obviously peaceful, quiet and calm, enclosed in here with a very nice sound out of it. So let's just turn around and get ready to head on out to go drive this. Up to this point, it's been a pretty leisurely cruise down the motorway, very much a grand tourer. I've been going between wet, comfort and sport modes. In wet and comfort, you always have the softest suspension. If you pop it into sport, you can then use the bumpy road button on the steering wheel that enables you to soften it further. In race or ESC off, you have the firmer suspension. But this combination allows you to enjoy the bumpy roads that we have here while still having the slightly sportier powertrain setup. And one of the things, of course, to discuss is the gearbox, and not that the 7-speed before this was a bad gearbox, but this is fantastic. The way it seamlessly shifts, the way it knows exactly what you want it to do, and it makes a very, very pleasant driving experience, it has to be said. Now if we press the auto button to pop it into manual, of course from 8th gear there are many gears to drop down through, but it's very, very quick and very lively, with a surprisingly nice sound to it as well. And of course with the direction that everything is taking at the moment in terms of sounds, this is quite a welcome surprise, particularly that little pop that you get on the upshifts as well. Of course, being turbocharged, you do have that slightly muted sound, we could say, but the car gives you plenty of character. Now, the Portofino M exists in the Ferrari lineup alongside the Roma, and that perhaps could be considered something a little bit peculiar, but the theory is that they are very different cars applying to different markets. The Roma is a fixed 2+ coupe, effectively. This is the 2+2 convertible, but very coupe-like when you drive it like this. With the roof in place, it's calm, it's composed, it's comfortable, but with that dual character that when the car originally launched I was so fascinated by, particularly considering how good the car looks, whether you have it roof up or roof down. It doesn't have those awkward shapes that typically apply to this kind of thing. Now if we turn it up into race, into this new driving mode, this is where the shifts get even quicker, the car gets even livelier, and where 620 horsepower, believe me, is plenty. This is a very, very, very quick machine. And in traditional Ferrari fashion, you have a prominent rev counter sitting right in front of you, silver in this case, but you can opt to have it in a number of different colours, up to 7,500 or so RPM to the top of the red line with nobody around me. I just want to drop down a few gears. If you hold the downshift paddle, it will automatically downshift whenever it can, and then it gives you a good kick. And obviously there are lots of technology systems and computers and controls, all of the latest Ferrari settings, the Ferrari Dynamic Enhancer for example, that uses brake modulation to give you more turn-in if you're out on a racetrack with this kind of thing. It's a Ferrari at the end of the day. It is still very much a super GT. In the case of this, it's still a car designed firstly and foremost to have performance, to be a sporty, engaging, exciting thing to pilot. And down some of these kind of roads, it just comes into its own. The race mode is actually fantastic. I think you can't have bumpy, you can have bumpy road mode when you're in race, you can't when you're up into ESC off. So really you've got the option of a number of different settings depending how you'd like to configure it, how you'd like to have it set up, to really let you have the right driving experience. And you might have noticed left-hand drive car in the UK. This is a Ferrari factory car that I'm driving today. Wow. I'm not necessarily sure that the car needed more power from before, but this is the way things are going, particularly with the arrival of the 296 GTB in the Ferrari lineup, offering 830 horsepower, and of course the SF90 Stradale with 1,000 horsepower. But the gearbox, really, these shorter ratios give you such quick acceleration in gear, very, very fast response, a very naturally aspirated feel despite being turbocharged. Obviously different ways that these things can be done, and surprisingly this very nice sound that you get out of it as well. It's always there a little bit, not in a droney way on the motorway. It gets very quiet and soft on the motorway, obviously valve controlled, but when you're just bumbling along like this through the countryside, exactly how you'd like it to be sounding. I would say inside, obviously this is the original Portofino technology in terms of the two displays that you have either side of the rev counter on the dashboard, both of which obviously are previous generation to the new curved display that the new cars also have, like the Roma and the SF90 and the 296, and you have the infotainment in the centre, more of which I'll show later, that I think could be a little bit quicker, it has to be said. You do have the passenger display over on the other side as well, for passengers to get some feedback and information about the drive. But like I say, here for example, where you should probably pop it back into comfort mode and have the softer suspension and put it back into auto, as you're cruising along at 30 odd miles an hour, it's probably very quickly going to get itself up into, we're in 6th already, and we're going to have 7th gear at 30 miles per hour. But it responds so fast, it just dropped from 7th down to 5th, up into 6th, up into 7th. It's constantly changing in the background, but you don't feel it. It's not annoying. It's not kind of acting in a way that makes, now we're in 8th gear, not acting in a way that makes you think, you know, why is it doing this? Why is it constantly changing as cars of old would? This just moves without issue. And on the other hand, as I said, if you want to have some fun out of it, you just drop it back down the other way as we go out into the country lanes again, put your foot to the floor, and it takes off. It launches you. Even in comfort mode, as we have it at the moment. Obviously, a very versatile car, I think is the way to describe it. Well, this is quite an unusual sight. We're coming past Cotswolds Airport, which has become a bit of an airplane graveyard as we go past the BA 747 and plenty more planes from TAP Portugal, South African Airlines. Sad times, to be honest. I've enjoyed many flights on British Airways 747s. There's quite a fleet of them over my shoulder as well. But alas, I think that comes the end of their lives, and there are plenty around actually. What a cool place to be. We've arrived for a checkpoint, and afterwards we will drive away with the roof down, but beforehand I want to show you how exactly this roof mechanism works and a few more things about the interior of the Portofino M here. For example, over to the passenger side of the dashboard we have the passenger display sitting underneath the new Portofino M badging. At the moment this is in the VDA setting, so when you change the Manettino and go, for example, between these different settings, it updates live to show you what's going on. You also here have the media navigation performance, which will give you a live readout of your speedometer and the rev counter, for example. It also now as well, if you pop the car into reverse, brings up the 360 cameras, which are always very helpful depending exactly what you would like to see out of this. You can bring up the right angles and be able to get parked in a tight space or near to the curb or whatever it might be, and you can change the different views as well. Apologies for all of the beeping with the different modes and settings that we're in at the moment. Let's just pop it back into neutral. The steering wheel has the familiar controls from Ferrari's recent times, the indicators on the wheel, your lights and your wipers, and obviously the carbon fibre finish with the LED driver zone option that this car has. We also now have the adaptive cruise control, or the pit lane speed limiter as it's named. You can change a few settings and the distance using the toggles that you have there, and you can also, as you can see here, have the neck warmer, so you have the optional hot air that can blow out if you want to go and drive, for example, with the roof down on a cold and chilly day. You have quite a few seat controls that are actually tucked down here, so you have a few motion for the electric seat panels themselves, and then you have also this button here which brings up the additional menu with your thermal comfort, so your heated and cooled seats, and the ability to go to the seat adjustment and change each of the bolsters. It does take a little bit of fiddling to go through this, but it's nice to have so much movement available with the seats. Now let's do the roof, and this is done with the button that you have right here. Give this a press and the roof operation begins. Windows go down, the rear glass lifts up on towards the top of the deck, then the rear deck lid itself actually opens up, the boot lid opens towards the rear, allowing the whole hardtop mechanism to be tucked away and then folded in back underneath that before the windows go back up. The boot lid closes, and you can then press the window button again to pull up those rear quarter windows, and you can also put in a wind deflector to the rear, which I think we will do for the drive when we depart, but all smooth sailing when it comes to that. I'll pop it into first gear, engine start stop for a moment. I want to show you the engine itself quickly, leave it just here in the centre, and we'll come round and have a very quick look at this many award winning 3.9 litre twin turbo V8. As I said, 620 horsepower in here, making a total of 760 newton meters as well, if I can find the right catch. There we go. And we have the beautifully presented Ferrari V8 up front, the red panels just to let you know exactly what is going on with this. Always a wonderful thing to admire and look at, obviously. With the engine sitting just behind the front axle to give the right weight distribution and dynamic capabilities as well. Anyway, close this back down, give it a good shut. We'll go have a quick break and then we'll be back on the road with the roof down. Now this is what it's about then. Out in the countryside, the sun trying to poke through the clouds, but roof down in a convertible Ferrari. Now before setting off, I did actually pop up the wind deflector, which sits over the seats behind. Of course, it does render them fairly useless, but that's normally stowed away inside a bag folded up in the boot. It has to be said, that was pretty easy to install, and it also has to be said that when you are driving in the car with the roof down, with the deflector in place, it is very calm in the cabin. You don't have tremendously blustery air making the experience rather unpleasant. In fact, it is a glorious place to be. Now we're in race at the moment, back into bumpy road, back into manual, dropping down through many a gear, because this is all about the aural symphony of a Ferrari roof down in the countryside, and this is what it's about. With that awesome pop that you get on the shifts as well. It's a really cool sound. It's not perhaps as loud roof down as I was expecting that it might end up being, and of course I am speaking fairly loudly because it is quite noisy with all of the air, turbulent air up above us. But driving along and thinking a little bit more, of course the Portofino M joins the Ferrari lineup currently alongside the Roma. Now they are two cars that do things quite differently in terms of the feel inside, in terms of the positioning. The Roma is of course the 2 Plus Coupe, this being the 2 Plus 2 convertible. Now in the future, I expect that we are quite likely to see the arrival of a Roma Spider, and when that does come to market, you would imagine it might time right appropriately with the end of the time of the Portofino M. So it would make sense, obviously, for the brand to extend and add some more longevity to the Portofino, especially after the work to introduce this. The car that came after the California and the California T and was actually launched in Portofino in Italy. Ferrari have done a lot of that recently, the Roma being launched obviously in Rome and making quite a special story around them all as well. So this car sits at the moment as that more entry level of the convertible GTs. Of course, its big brother, the 812 GTS, is an astonishing car. I rave about them all of the time. A car with the 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 as opposed to the 3.9 litre turbo V8. Very different feel, very different style, I would say. This is softer. This is more of a daily or a comfortable long cruiser without quite having the same sportiness and edginess that the 812 carries. With so much power, 800 horsepower, that thing is a savage monster that you always have to watch. Whereas this, it feels like it looks after you a bit, right? If you haven't turned everything off even, if you haven't gone fully into ESC off, the car is going to keep you on the straight path. It's not going to do anything crazy, and it's fairly easy to drive. The steering isn't too heavy while still being Ferrari's traditional, very direct and accurate steering, giving you confidence at the wheel and having a smooth ride. And like I say, we're in race at the moment. If you do turn it back down all the way to comfort, it rides really nicely, really very well. And now cruising along, it's that feeling of having a very large sunroof open above you. It's not obviously the same as if you didn't have the deflector, where it would be much more the wind in your hair, whereas this is a very pleasant experience, a really nice thing to be driving and just enjoying and cruising through the countryside at the wheel of. Then when you're back under the trees, foot down, it gets a move on. Make no mistake about it. And this is the funny thing. It's the entry Ferrari, as I said, in some ways, but as a car, it is absolutely not. And that's, I think, one of the strange things about something like this, is that it's easy to look at it in the lineup and get perhaps the wrong impression. And as I've said, I would like it to have the latest generation of technology. I would like it to have the full digital display, and I'd like it to have updated infotainment in many ways as well. It does offer both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which normally you don't see in Ferraris. I think Android Auto being brand new now to the mix, which for somebody like myself who likes to use an Android, that is certainly a very welcome option to be able to order. And of course, when it comes to options, this car is very highly equipped with all of the carbon, the bridge, the cup holders, the steering wheel, and all of the exterior options, which obviously adds a fair bit to the standard £175,000 retail price of the car here in the UK. it's just quite addictive, and the sound is quite nice. It's not the loudest in the world. Perhaps I thought earlier when I was driving it roof up that when I took the roof off it would get louder, but it's not as if it's quiet. It's just a nice tone, lots of burbles to it. Ferrari have clearly done a very good job when it comes to working with reducing their fleet emissions, but maintaining some excitement from the products, maintaining some enjoyment that you get behind the wheel, because at the end of the day, that's what so much of this is all about. We buy these cars out of passion, not necessarily out of necessity, I think it's fair to say. This is genuinely a brilliant car for driving in this kind of environment, quite bumpy with twisty roads. Being here in something much more extreme would actually be fairly uncomfortable on these kind of roads, whereas this actually absorbs everything, just rides and soaks it all up incredibly well. And with the soundtrack to boot under the trees and off the walls as well, as we go through some of the tighter and twistier corners and slow it down into the speed limit section as well. The drive for today is coming to an end. We arrive back here at Dick Lovett Ferrari in Swindon, but we'll have a few more things just to run over when it comes to this car, a few more details and bits and pieces I'd like to tell you about it before we completely wave farewell to it for today. What a fantastic experience to get at the wheel of the new Portofino M and see the changes and experience particularly the gearbox and the upgrades on that front. But before we do hop on out into neutral, sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good, it has to be said. So let's have a better look around some of the interior. Back here then, parked up at the dealership. I do want to close the roof, so I will go back to just doing this for a moment. Obviously it takes, I guess it must be just shy of 20 seconds or so to fully enclose the cabin. I've left the wind deflector in place behind us. You can obviously take it out. While it's like that, you won't be fitting anybody into the back of the car. Now you can squeeze, if you're really trying for a very short journey, an adult back there, but probably only on one side, because you need the seats quite far forwards to make that possible. I suppose like this now, you're very much in a coupe in terms of the amount of glass that you have around you, the sound, and if I hop out, also the looks as well. Before I do hop out though, just quickly a couple more things to point out. Here on the door you've got your mirror controls, you've got your memory seat controls, the button to open the boot, we've got the JBL sound system, carbon fibre door sills. We touched a little bit on the button and the controls earlier, the nice aluminium kick plates down at the bottom, your cruise control functionality, the steering wheel with all of the selectors on it, this nice carbon trim that runs across the bottom of the passenger display, and then all of the lovely interior, the dual tone in here with this Coyo Toscana with the Nero as well for the upper sections, with some of the trim details just to really bring it to life, make it feel very, very nice. This houses a cup holder just underneath. Here we've got the armrest as well with USB ports back there, a little storage tray as well in the middle at the back. Now if I hop on out, we'll actually open the boot so I can show you in there. There's a decent tray there actually, lots of storage in the door pocket. This is where the lines just flow so well for a convertible, and if we open this up, you do actually have a decent amount of space. This is effectively the divider. You can open it and then enlarge the amount of space that you've got, but until you pull it back down manually, you can't open the roof, just to make sure that you aren't squishing any of your luggage back there. It's not the most convenient shape in the world, but there is a very decent amount of space, and of course you get the personalization specifications plaque up here where you can see the full details of this particular car, including the neck warmer. I haven't touched on the neck warmer, but you do have 3 different settings of the amount of heat you can have blowing at you at the back of your neck, and again that will work to keep it pleasant on a cold day. Thankfully today has been fairly balmy and warm, so I can't complain, but this is where the lines of this car are really, really nice. That dual charactered approach that you get from the Portofino, and now of course the Portofino M as well, particularly in this specification. The combination of a classic appearance with the paint colour, the Celeste Metallic, the Coyo Toscana, the dual tone wheels, the black calipers. It's very, very elegant, very, very smart. We also have the more traditional red as well for a quick comparison to see the differences between the two. Very nice cars all around here at the moment. So what else can I tell you? I think that's pretty much covered my experience today, my first drive in the Portofino M. I do see how it joins the lineup at the moment, a very quickly expanding Ferrari lineup, some incredible models, of course the new 296 GTB for example joining the lineup, the Super GTs, the 812, 812 Superfast and GTS, and the new Competizione and Aperta. But that was quite an interesting car, so I hope this has been an informative video. Thank you very much for watching and coming along for my first drive experience in the newest Ferrari, the Portofino M, to arrive on the roads. That's it for now though. Thank you very much as always for watching, guys. I appreciate your support an awful lot, and I will see you again very soon. Cheers.